Our planet's most profound secrets are not on land, but hidden under the sea. The evidence for a lost global civilization lies scattered across the ocean floor, in 15 sunken ruins that defy our standard history. By the end of this journey, you will see a startling new blueprint for humanity's ancient past emerge from the depths. We will investigate submerged pyramids in Japan, a legendary city from Indian texts, and mysterious roads in the Bahamas, all connected by a single, catastrophic event. How could cultures thousands of miles apart build in such eerily similar ways? And what does a stone monolith deep in the Mediterranean tell us about our forgotten ancestors? Does the story of our origins need to be completely rewritten beneath the clear, turquoise waters off Japan's southernmost island? The seafloor holds a secret that challenges everything we think we know. This is the Yonaguni Monument, a sprawling structure of colossal stone terraces that seem to have been carved by human hands. Enormous blocks with unnervingly sharp 90-degree angles form what look like wide staircases, towering pillars, and even a massive archway, all resting silently at a depth of about 80 feet. The sheer geometry of the place feels intentional, as if you are swimming through the ruins of a forgotten citadel. According to marine geologist Masaki Kimura, who has studied the site for decades, that is precisely what it is. He points to what appear to be clear tool marks on the rock, along with symmetrical designs and carved channels that do not match typical natural erosion patterns. His conclusion is bold that this is the remnant of a man-made complex, perhaps a ceremonial pyramid or a coastal fortress, constructed at a time when this area was dry land, over 10,000 years ago. That date alone is staggering, placing its construction in an era mainstream history describes as populated only by small, nomadic hunter-gatherer communities. Critics, of course, offer a different explanation. They argue that the entire formation is a spectacular but entirely natural result of sandstone fracturing along its bedding planes, shaped over millennia by powerful ocean currents. The debate is intense and both sides present compelling evidence, yet for anyone who sees the images or visits the site, the emotional impact is undeniable. The scale is simply too grand, the angles too precise, the layout too suggestive of architecture to dismiss easily. Whether carved by nature or by ancient hands, the Yonaguni Monument serves as a powerful opening statement in our search. It forces a single, profound question onto the table. If this structure is indeed artificial, what does it say about the technological and societal capabilities of humanity at the end of the last ice age? This sunken enigma off the coast of Japan is not an isolated curiosity, but rather the first compelling piece in a much larger, global puzzle. The debate surrounding Yonaguni is a clash between geology and possibility, but halfway across the world, a discovery emerged from myth itself. In the warm waters of the Gulf of Khambhat off India's western coast, a legend walked out of scripture and onto the sonar screen. For millennia, Hindu texts have spoken of Dwarka, a glorious and prosperous city of gold, the divine kingdom of Lord Krishna. The ancient stories are vivid, describing a metropolis of unparalleled beauty and wealth, protected by massive walls and bustling with maritime trade. But they also carry a tragic ending, recounting how, after Krishna's departure from the world, the entire city was consumed by the rising ocean, vanishing beneath the waves in a single cataclysmic event. For centuries, this was considered a powerful allegory, a spiritual metaphor about the impermanence of earthly things. Then, in 2001, everything changed. During a routine survey, scientists operating sonar equipment detected something extraordinary on the seafloor, about 120 feet down. The scans revealed not random debris, but the distinct outlines of massive stone structures. They mapped what appeared to be large geometric formations, grids of streets, and the foundations of substantial buildings spread across a significant area. Subsequent dredging brought up physical proof, pulling artifacts like pottery shards, stone tools, and beads from the ancient silt. When researchers analyzed these materials, the results sent shockwaves through the archaeological community. Preliminary dating suggested some of these artifacts could be as old as 9,500 years. That date is not just old, it is revolutionary. It would place this sunken settlement thousands of years before the rise of the great Indus Valley civilization, long considered the cradle of Indian culture. Suddenly, a sacred myth was staring back at us as material evidence. The implications are profound. This is not merely an old village. The scale and organization implied by the sonar images suggest a sophisticated, highly organized maritime society, one capable of large-scale construction and long-distance trade. It bridges the gap between ancient memory and physical discovery, forcing us to ask how many other sacred stories dismissed as mere legend might be rooted in real historical events. The submerged ruins of Dwarka do not just suggest a lost city, they whisper that our oldest narratives might be chronicles, waiting for their truth to be uncovered by the turning tides of time. The story of sunken ruins is not confined to the ancient East, but surfaces in the most unexpected of places. In the impossibly clear, shallow waters just off the coast of North Bimini in the Bahamas, the seafloor presents a riddle of stone. Stretching for over half a mile, a formation of massive limestone blocks lies in a remarkably straight line. These are not random shapes, but rectangular slabs with flat surfaces and sharp edges, arranged with a precision that feels deliberate, like a paved roadway or perhaps the foundation of a massive wall now claimed by the ocean. This is the Bimini Road, a site that exists at the very crossroads of legend and geology. Its modern fame was ignited by the predictions of a man named Edgar Cayce, who, while in a trance state, described the Bahamas as a remnant of the lost continent of Atlantis and foretold that a road would be discovered there in the late 1960s. When divers indeed found the formation shortly after, it seemed like a prophecy fulfilled, weaving the site permanently into the fabric of alternative history. Mainstream science, however, offers a far less mystical explanation. Geologists point to a well-documented natural process where beachrock, a type of limestone that forms in intertidal zones, fractures along its natural bedding planes. Over time, they argue, the relentless action of tides and currents can break this stone into remarkably geometric blocks and align them in deceptively orderly rows. It is a classic case of pareidolia, they suggest, where our pattern-seeking minds see intention in a beautiful accident of nature. Yet for researchers like Dr. Greg Little, the simplicity of that explanation does not fully satisfy. He and others point to the consistent size and spacing of the blocks, which seem too uniform for a purely random fracture. They highlight nearby anomalies like a circular formation of stones dubbed the Bimini Circle, which resembles the foundation of a prehistoric structure. Could these formations together be the remnants of an ancient harbor, a breakwater constructed by a seafaring people to protect their vessels? The Bimini Road, bathed in Caribbean sunlight, embodies the essential tension in our search for a lost past. It is a tangible puzzle lying in a tropical paradise, a place where the human desire to find meaning in the stones meets the rigorous, often skeptical, voice of established science. This site does not offer easy answers, but it poses a critical question that echoes across the Atlantic. If this is merely a trick of geology, why do so many of these enigmatic formations, from Japan to the Bahamas, provoke the same profound sense of mystery? While the Bimini Road remains a beautiful mystery, the Mediterranean holds a sunken city whose reality is beyond dispute. off the southern coast of Greece, in the shallow, sun-dappled waters of the Peloponnese, lies Pavlopetri. This is not a legend or a geological oddity, but a complete, mapped Bronze Age town, the oldest known submerged city on our planet. Its foundations have rested beneath the sea for more than 5,000 years, a silent, sprawling time capsule from an era when great pyramids were still new. Discovered in 1967, Pavlopetri offers none of the ambiguous angles of Yonaguni. Its truth is laid out with stunning clarity. From above, the city plan is perfectly visible, a ghostly blueprint etched into the sandy seabed. We can see the grid of its main streets, the outlines of homes, public courtyards, and even dozens of tombs. This was a functioning community, a hub of activity that thrived on maritime trade, connected by its harbor to the wider world of the ancient Mediterranean. The organization is striking, revealing a society with a shared concept of urban space, of public and private areas, of how a town should be built to support the lives of its people. Underwater archaeologist Dr. John Henderson has led meticulous projects to laser scan and map every stone of this lost settlement. His work paints a picture not of a sudden, violent catastrophe, but of a slower, more inexorable change. Pavlopetri was gradually abandoned as sea levels crept higher over centuries, its residents eventually retreating before the advancing water, leaving their homes to the sea. This process provides a critical, real-world model. It shows us exactly how a coastal civilization can slip beneath the waves, not in a single dramatic event, but through the relentless, patient pressure of environmental change. Pavlopetri is the anchor of our entire exploration, the proven fact that grounds the more speculative mysteries. It demonstrates unequivocally that sophisticated societies did build along coastlines now underwater, and that the sea can preserve their memory with incredible fidelity. This accepted science makes the bigger question even more compelling. If one planned Bronze Age city can be lost in this way, how many others from even earlier chapters of human history might still be waiting on the continental shelves, their stories completely erased from our memory? The quiet streets of Pavlopetri are a sobering reminder of just how much of our past might simply be in the wrong place for us to find it, hidden not in distant deserts, but beneath the familiar, shifting shoreline. High in the thin air of the Andes, another civilization met the water, but here the waves are nearly 2.5 miles above the sea. Lake Titicaca, straddling the border of Bolivia and Peru, is a place of profound stillness and deep mystery. Its vast, sapphire surface reflects the snow-capped peaks of the Cordillera Real, a scene of breathtaking beauty that hides a secret world below. Beneath those tranquil waters, divers and archaeologists have mapped an astonishing submerged landscape. They have found the remains of a sprawling temple complex with walls and terraces that descend into the dark. They have identified what appear to be ancient agricultural fields, painstakingly terraced, and the ghostly outline of a long, straight roadway, all resting silently on the lake bed. These are not random stones, but the organized remnants of a significant settlement. Local Aymara legends have spoken for generations of a glorious city named Wanaku, a center of great knowledge and power that was swallowed by the lake during a time of great flooding. The discoveries on the lake floor give those oral histories a powerful new weight. Artifacts recovered from the site, including a beautifully carved stone anchor and delicate offerings made of gold, point to a sophisticated pre-Incan society, likely connected to the Tiwanaku culture, for whom the lake was a sacred center of ritual and cosmology. This high-altitude underwater city forces a dramatic shift in perspective. It dismantles the convenient idea that only coastal civilizations were vulnerable to rising seas. Here was an advanced society thriving in the mountains, an inland culture of farmers, priests, and engineers, yet it too faced a cataclysmic encounter with water. The geology of the region adds a fascinating layer. The presence of ancient marine fossils around the lake suggests this entire basin was once connected to the ocean, lifted skyward by monumental tectonic forces over eons. Could the flooding of Yonaguni have been the result of a catastrophic seismic event, a massive landslide that dammed a river and caused the lake level to rise suddenly and irrevocably? Or does it point to a period of extreme climatic change that affected even the highest reaches of the planet? The ruins beneath Lake Titicaca tell a universal story of adaptation and loss. They show that the urge to build complex societies was not limited by geography, and that the forces that can reclaim those societies, whether shifting water, shaking earth, or changing climate, are equally boundless. This site connects the mountains to the sea in a single, sobering lesson that nowhere was truly safe from the great resets of the ancient world. The idea of a solitary sunken ruin is compelling, but the true power of this mystery lies in patterns. Across vast oceans separated by continents, the same architectural echoes appear in the deep. We have already seen the monumental terraces of Yonaguni off Japan, a structure whose very existence asks if we are looking at a man-made pyramid reclaimed by the sea. Now cast your gaze to the other side of the world, to the deep, dark waters off the western tip of Cuba. Here, in 2001, a sonar survey led by oceanographer Polina Zalitsky made a discovery that sent a shock through the world of alternative archaeology. Gliding over a featureless plain some 2,000 feet below the surface, their equipment painted a picture not of sand or rock, but of geometry. The sonar returns showed what appeared to be massive, smooth stone blocks, some arranged in circular patterns, others forming long, straight lines and what looked like the outlines of vast pyramidal structures. The images suggested a sprawling complex of megalithic architecture resting in the perpetual night of the abyss. The depth is the first staggering detail. 2,000 feet, that is not a depth where waves or storms could shape stone. This landscape was submerged not by a slow creep, but by a dramatic, irrevocable plunge. To reach such a depth, this site would have had to sink at a time when global sea levels were dramatically lower, a window that points directly to the end of the last ice age, over 12,000 years ago. This timeline is not a casual suggestion, it is a geological imperative. The second staggering detail is the style. While no diver can yet reach these Cuban formations to touch them, the sonar silhouettes bear a haunting resemblance to other sites. The sense of scale, the suggestion of stepped platforms, the aura of intentional design, it all feels strangely familiar. It whispers of a shared architectural vocabulary, a common blueprint used by cultures that, according to our textbooks, should have had no knowledge of each other. Could the terraced formations of Yonaguni in the Pacific and the geometric outlines off Cuba in the Atlantic be distant chapters of the same forgotten story? This is the cornerstone idea, the hypothesis that transforms a collection of interesting anomalies into a potential paradigm shift. It proposes that these are not isolated accidents, but scattered fragments of a connected whole, a global cultural layer that was interrupted and submerged. The sheer distance between these sites forces a profound question. If they are artificial, what kind of civilization possessed not only the skill to work stone on such a scale, but the nautical capability to traverse and influence such impossibly wide stretches of the ancient world? The silent stones in the Cuban deep do not answer that, but they amplify the question into a roar that now echoes across every ocean basin. The evidence is not just in the open ocean, but hidden in plain sight along the very coastlines we know today. In the gentle waters of the Bay of Douarnenez, off the coast of Brittany, France, a familiar mystery takes a dramatic turn. Here, the world-renowned stone alignments of Carnac do not simply end at the modern shoreline. They continue silently beneath the waves, Through aerial photography and sonar mapping, researchers have charted hundreds of megalithic menhirs, those same towering standing stones now lying on the submerged seafloor. These are not random boulders. They are arranged in deliberate rows and circles, a perfect extension of the patterns found on land, forming what was once a single, uninterrupted sacred landscape of staggering scale. This discovery is not a matter of debate or geological interpretation. It is irrefutable physical proof. The identical stones, the continued alignments, they tell a clear and simple story. The original complex built by Europe's ancient megalithic culture was far, far larger than what survives on dry land today. A significant portion of their world, a domain of ritual and ceremony, was constructed on coastal plains that have since been flooded by the relentless rise of the sea. This changes everything we thought we knew about these builders. It pushes the timeline of their culture back by thousands of years, to an era when these areas were dry and accessible. It dramatically expands our understanding of their territorial reach and the ambition of their projects. We are not looking at isolated groups erecting a few stones, but at a sophisticated society that shaped entire landscapes we have only partially preserved. The drowned menhirs of Carnac provide the most direct link imaginable between a known archaeological treasure and the lost world it implies. They are a silent, sobering meter stick measuring exactly how much of our prehistoric heritage has been consumed by the ocean. This is not speculation about a lost civilization across the sea, but a confirmed loss of our own civilization's early chapters, hidden just offshore, reminding us that the map of ancient Europe is missing enormous, crucial pieces now resting under shallow, tranquil water. The silent stones of Carnac prove a coastline can be a memory, but what happens when an entire metropolis slips beneath the waves? The Mediterranean offers a breathtaking answer, not in myth but in resurrected stone. This is the lost city of Heracleion, known to the ancient Egyptians as Thonis. For over 1,000 years, it was a legend, a place mentioned by Herodotus and visited by Helen of Troy in epic tales, but with no physical trace on any map. Historians debated if it was a real trading hub or merely a poetic invention. Then, in the year 2000, underwater archaeologist Frank Gaudio and his team, working off the coast of modern-day Alexandria, made a discovery that blurred the line between history and fantasy. Their sonar first detected anomalies on the seafloor. Then, divers descended into the murky green waters, and as the silt settled, a world emerged from the shadows. They were not looking at scattered ruins, but at a city frozen in time. Colossal statues of a pharaoh and a queen, each standing over 15 feet tall, lay peacefully on the seabed, their serene faces gazing upward through the water. Giant stone steels covered in perfectly preserved hieroglyphs stood where they had been erected. They found the remains of grand temples dedicated to the gods Ammon and Heracles, from which the Greeks gave the city its name, along with hundreds of anchors, delicate gold coins, and everyday pottery. This was not a slow abandonment like Pavlopetri. Heracleion was a vital, bustling international port, the mandatory gateway to Egypt for all Greek trade, a city of immense wealth and religious significance. Geologists believe it met its fate through a combination of rising sea levels and a devastating phenomenon called liquefaction, where the soft, saturated clay and silt of the Nile Delta simply gave way during a seismic event. The city did not just flood, it sank, swallowed whole by the very land it was built upon, vanishing completely by the 2nd century before the Common Era. Its rediscovery is a masterclass in underwater preservation. The lack of oxygen and the protective blanket of sediment acted as a perfect time capsule, keeping organic materials like wood and delicate artifacts intact for millennia. Heracleion serves as a crucial historical control in our global search. It is not a mystery from a hypothetical Ice Age civilization, but a fully documented, historically attested city, that was nevertheless utterly erased from human memory until our technology found it. This fact is profoundly empowering and a little haunting. It demonstrates with absolute clarity that the seabed can preserve a complex urban center in stunning detail. If a city of this scale and importance could vanish so completely for 2,000 years, what does that say about the potential for older, far less documented metropolises built in coastal zones now deep underwater? Heracleion is the proof of concept, the tangible evidence that the ocean floor is not a graveyard but a library, and we have only just begun to read its first few pages. The power of water is not only to conceal, but sometimes, in moments of immense force, to reveal. In December of 2004, a catastrophic tsunami surged across the Indian Ocean, a tragedy of heartbreaking scale that reshaped coastlines and lives. Yet in its aftermath, off the ancient port town of Mahabalipuram on India's southeastern coast, the retreating waves pulled back a curtain. For local fishermen, what they saw was not a surprise but a confirmation. There, where only unbroken sea had been, lay a scattered complex of large, rectangular stone blocks, the suggestions of walls and what appeared to be steps leading down into the deep. This was the ninth ruin, a submerged extension of a World Heritage Site already famous for its magnificent shore temples carved from granite. For centuries, the folklore of this region had spoken of the seven pagodas, a group of splendid temples so glorious they angered the gods. As the legend goes, 6 of these majestic structures were swallowed by the sea in a single great flood, leaving only the single shore temple we see today. The tsunami, in its devastating passage, had momentarily revealed the physical truth behind the story. Subsequent archaeological surveys confirmed the presence of man-made structures stretching nearly a mile out to sea. Divers documented large, dressed stone blocks, some weighing several tons, arranged in clear formations. They mapped what looked like a long, submerged wall, platforms, and the remains of shrines, all lying in relatively shallow water. This is not a mystery imported from afar. It is a local memory written in stone and water. The site ties directly to recorded folklore, suggesting a collective memory of a much larger, more expansive temple city that served as a major port and spiritual center, now largely submerged. It highlights a profound duality of nature, how the same force that can bring unimaginable loss can also, in a fleeting and poignant moment, expose secrets long buried. The structures off Mahabalipuram encourage a fundamental shift in how we view history. They ask us to listen more closely to local traditions, to treat oral histories not as mere myth, but as potential chronicles of real geological events. When a community speaks for generations of a great city lost to the waves, perhaps they are preserving a precise and accurate memory of their own ancestral landscape, a memory that waited centuries for the ocean itself to briefly testify to its truth. The seafloor holds shapes that defy easy explanation, and none is more visually arresting than the Baltic Sea Anomaly. In the cold, dark waters of the Gulf of Bothnia, a sonar scan in 2011 painted a picture that immediately captured the world's imagination. Resting on a featureless plain, the image showed a near-perfect circular formation roughly 60 meters across, almost the length of a professional soccer field. Its form was uncanny, resembling a giant disc or a massive, collapsed dome, with a distinct, long trailing track behind it, as if it had skidded to a halt. Adding to the mystery were what appeared to be straight lines and sharp, right-angled features on its surface, geometries that seemed utterly alien in a natural seabed environment. The initial reaction was a mix of astonishment and wild speculation, with theories ranging from a sunken prehistoric monument to something far more otherworldly. The scientific community, however, quickly offered a more grounded explanation. Geologists pointed to the region's glacial history, suggesting the anomaly is likely a rare but natural formation, perhaps a glacial moraine deposit or an unusual outcropping of pillow basalt, a volcanic rock that can form rounded shapes. They argue that the straight lines could be explained by glacial scoring or the natural fracturing of rock under immense pressure. This intense debate highlights the fundamental challenge of exploring our planet's final frontier. In the perpetual darkness of the deep sea, our primary eyes are sonar and remote sensors. A single ping, a solitary image, is all we have to interpret landscapes we cannot see or touch directly. Our minds, wired to find patterns, can project incredible stories onto ambiguous data. The Baltic Sea Anomaly, therefore, is more than just a curious sonar blip. It represents the thrilling uncertainty of discovery itself. It forces us to confront a critical question: how do we responsibly investigate the unknown without letting our hopes shape what we see? This enigmatic circle on the Baltic floor is a perfect symbol for our entire journey, a reminder that the line between a world-altering ruin and a fascinating trick of geology can be as thin as a sonar beam. It cautions us to demand rigorous evidence, even as it fuels our wonder about what else might be waiting in the abyss, waiting for the right technology and the right open mind to reveal its true nature. While the Baltic Sea Anomaly remains a shadowy question, the Mediterranean offers a sunken answer of breathtaking clarity. Off the coast of modern Israel, near Mount Carmel, the sea guards a time capsule from a foundational chapter of human history. This is Atlit, a Neolithic village resting under the sand and water, a community so perfectly preserved it feels as if its inhabitants simply stepped away. Dating back to around 7,000 years before the Common Era, this is not a city of empire, but a quiet, thriving town of farmers and fishermen. Archaeologists mapping the site have found the stone foundations of rectangular houses arranged in an orderly plan. They discovered a deep, stone-lined freshwater well at its center, a testament to careful planning and communal effort. Most strikingly, they uncovered a semicircle of massive stones, a ritual monument echoing the megalithic circles that would arise in Europe thousands of years later. Here, life and its challenges are etched into the very seabed. Studies of the remains found at the site have revealed the earliest known evidence of health challenges associated with tuberculosis, offering a poignant glimpse into the hardships faced by this early community. The story of Atlit is one of sudden silence. There are no signs of war or gradual departure. Instead, the evidence points to a single catastrophic event, likely a powerful tsunami triggered by a volcanic collapse in the Mediterranean that flooded the settlement with saltwater, burying it under protective layers of sand. This was not a slow drowning, but a swift and decisive end. The profound value of Atlit lies in its beautiful, heartbreaking normality. This was a sophisticated society that had mastered agriculture, animal husbandry, and maritime technology, building a stable life from the land and sea. It represents not the fall of a legendary empire, but the loss of the very bedrock of human civilization, the stable, innovative communities that formed the foundation for everything that came after. Its discovery forces us to expand our definition of a lost civilization. Grandeur is not the only measure of importance. Sometimes, the most significant ruins are those of a peaceful town, a snapshot of daily life and resilience, abruptly sealed by the ocean and saved for us to discover millennia later. It is a humble, powerful reminder that environmental change has always been the great leveler, capable of resetting the human story not just in legendary capitals, but in the quiet, prosperous villages that represented our first true homes. The quiet village of Atlit shows the fragility of our first homes, but in the vast Pacific, a civilization chose to build its capital not on land, but defiantly within the embrace of the sea itself. This is Madol, a city of staggering ambition rising from a coral reef off the coast of Pohnpei. 92 artificial islets, each a platform of colossal basalt logs, are arranged in a geometric grid connected by a network of tidal canals. To stand among its silent, moss-covered walls is to witness an engineering marvel, a place where an estimated 750 million pounds of stone were moved across water, a feat that would challenge modern builders. This is the Venice of the Pacific, the ceremonial and political heart of the Sonar dynasty, a complex chiefdom that ruled these islands for centuries. Yet local oral histories whisper of something more. They speak of a time when the city was grander, its reach extending further, with structures and pathways that now lie beneath the lagoon's surface. Some archaeological surveys have indeed noted anomalies, suggestions of walls and foundations continuing beyond the visible islets, submerged in the surrounding waters. This raises a profound possibility. Could the magnificent Nan Madol we see today be merely the surviving core, the highest points of a much larger complex that has partially surrendered to the rising Pacific? The idea connects directly to the region's deepest legends, stories of a vast lost continent called Mu or Lemuria, a Pacific homeland that sank beneath the waves, scattering its people and knowledge across the ocean's islands. While the literal continent remains in the realm of myth, the potential for partially drowned coastal cities is not. The builders of Nan Madol were masters of hydrology, engineering their city in harmony with the tides. If sea levels have risen even modestly since its construction around 1200 years ago, it is entirely logical that its lowest-lying districts would now be underwater. This pattern from the Mediterranean to the Pacific repeats with haunting consistency. It tells a story not of a single catastrophic sinkage, but of a long, slow retreat, a battle against encroaching water that many coastal cultures ultimately lost. Nan Madol, therefore, becomes a powerful Pacific chapter in our global story. It represents a sophisticated society that thrived by the sea, adapted to its rhythms, and yet still could not hold back the ocean's eternal advance. Its potential submerged extensions are a silent testament to that long, slow defeat, and a bridge between a known, magnificent ruin and the broader, watery graveyard of ancient human ambition that may surround it. The silent canals of Nan Madol speak of a slow retreat, but in the central Mediterranean, the sea has preserved a roadmap of a vanished world. Around the sun-drenched islands of Malta and Gozo, the clear blue waters hide a landscape frozen in time. Divers exploring the seabed have documented something extraordinary, what appear to be ancient cart ruts, deep parallel grooves carved into the limestone bedrock. These mysterious tracks are well known on land, crisscrossing the Maltese countryside like the fossilized remains of a prehistoric railway system, their purpose still debated by scholars. Yet here they do not stop at the modern shoreline. They continue descending in perfect, unbroken lines down the submerged slopes, running across the seafloor for hundreds of meters before vanishing into the deep blue. Alongside these ruts, researchers have noted large, flat stone slabs and arrangements that suggest the foundations of structures, possibly extensions of the famous megalithic temples that stand above. This is not a matter of interpretation, it is a physical fact. The land simply continues under the water, carrying the marks of human activity from a time when this was not sea but solid ground. These submarine cart ruts are a direct, tangible link to Malta's enigmatic temple builders, a culture that erected some of the oldest free-standing stone structures on Earth, thousands of years before the pyramids of Giza. The implications are profound. For these ruts to be submerged, the Maltese islands must have been significantly larger during the peak of this temple-building period. Vast tracts of coastal plains, now lost, would have provided essential farmland to support the substantial populations needed to quarry, transport, and erect these colossal temples. More importantly, it suggests their entire ritual landscape was far more expansive. The temples we marvel at today on dry land were likely just the central nodes of a much larger sacred geography, with processional ways, satellite shrines, and farmlands that have all been claimed by the rising Mediterranean. This discovery provides a crucial Mediterranean piece in our global puzzle. It directly ties a specific, well-documented prehistoric culture to the universal phenomenon of post-glacial flooding. We are not looking at a hypothetical lost civilization from a forgotten age, but at the confirmed physical loss of territory from a known civilization. The silent grooves on the seafloor are like a measuring tape dropped by history itself, showing us exactly how much of their world has disappeared. They force a simple, powerful question. If so much of the Maltese builders' world is underwater, how many other coastal cultures whose temples and towns we have never found have been completely erased by the same rising tides? The answer may lie not in the open ocean, but in a place where legend says an empire sank in a single day and night. The waters of the Gulf of Khambhat hold a second, deeper secret, one that pushes the very limits of archaeological science. During that same groundbreaking survey in 2001, the same team from India's National Institute of Ocean Technology detected something else entirely, separate from the legendary city of Dwarka. In another area of the seafloor, their sonar painted a picture of massive geometric formations. The images suggested the outlines of large, rectangular foundations, structures that some researchers interpreted as a possible granary for storing grain, and even a sophisticated public bath complex. These are not the features of a simple village, but of organized communal architecture, hinting at urban planning on a significant scale. The most startling evidence, however, came not from the sonar but from the dredge. When the team brought up samples from the seabed, they recovered pieces of worked wood and other artifacts. Controversial carbon dating performed on these wood samples yielded a date that sent shockwaves through the academic world, suggesting an age of up to 9,500 years. If verified, this would not merely predate the Indus Valley civilization. It would shatter our conventional timeline for the rise of complex society in the entire region by several millennia. This potential discovery represents the thrilling, yet deeply frustrating, frontier of underwater exploration. The site lies in an environment of punishingly strong currents and perpetually murky, silt-laden water, making direct visual verification by divers or even remote-operated vehicles exceedingly difficult and dangerous. The very conditions that may have preserved the site now guard it from clear examination. This creates a perfect storm of scientific controversy. Enthusiasts see the sonar shapes and the radical dates as definitive proof of a lost, advanced culture. Skeptics, however, argue that the strong currents could have moved and deposited ancient wood from elsewhere, skewing the dating, and that the sonar images might be misinterpreted natural rock formations. The Gulf of Khambhat site, therefore, is more than just another ruin. It is a living case study in how history is made and challenged. It sits at the cutting edge of discovery, where initial, tantalizing data promises to rewrite everything, but the slow, arduous, and often ambiguous process of gathering definitive proof is still a battle against the sea itself. This site tests the limits of our methodology and our patience, forcing us to hold a profound question in suspension. How do we responsibly embrace revolutionary possibilities while demanding the rigorous evidence that true science requires? It is a reminder that the ocean's greatest secrets are often the most fiercely guarded, revealing themselves not in a single eureka moment, but through decades of painstaking inquiry and debate. The final piece of evidence is not a sprawling city, but a single, silent stone. In the deep channel between Sicily and the coast of Tunisia, the seafloor holds a monument that speaks volumes through its solitary form. Resting on a submerged plateau that was once a dry island during the last ice age, researchers discovered a colossal stone monolith. It measures over 12 meters in length, roughly the size of a school bus, and its form tells a clear story. This massive block was intentionally cut from a larger piece of stone, shaped by human hands. Most tellingly, it bears a single, perfectly regular hole drilled straight through its body, a feature with no possible natural explanation. This is not a random boulder. It is a crafted megalith, a piece of architecture. Analysis places its creation at a time when this land was above water, over 9,000 years ago, making it a contemporary of the most radical dates suggested for sites like Dwarka in India. The purpose of this lonely giant is open to interpretation. Some researchers suggest it could have been part of an ancient lighthouse, a navigational beacon for prehistoric mariners crossing this vital Mediterranean passage. Others see it as a component of a larger ritual site, perhaps a calendar stone or a sacred marker, part of a complex that has otherwise been scattered by time and tides. But its ultimate function is almost secondary to its mere existence. This monolith is a smoking gun, an undeniable artifact of human presence on a landscape that is now hundreds of feet beneath the waves. It proves beyond any reasonable doubt that prehistoric peoples were not just living along coastlines, but actively exploiting, navigating, and building upon the vast continental shelves that the rising oceans later claimed. This single stone, with its deliberate hole, connects directly to the global pattern. It is a Mediterranean cousin to the menhirs of sunken Carnac and the ceremonial circles of Atlit. It confirms that the builders of the ancient world were operating on a map far larger than the one we have today, a map that included fertile plains and strategic islands we can now only access with submarines. The profound implication is clear. If one such marker has been found, how many thousands more still lie undiscovered on the drowned shelves of every continent? This monolith is not an ending but a starting point. It is a definitive signpost left on the ocean floor by our distant ancestors, pointing toward a forgotten chapter of human ambition written on a now vanished world. The scattered stones we have encountered form a constellation, and when we connect them, a startling image begins to emerge. Across 15 sites, from the Pacific to the Mediterranean, 3 powerful patterns repeat with a consistency that defies simple chance. First, the language of stone itself, a global architectural echo. From the terraced megaliths of Yonaguni to the standing stones of sunken Carnac, from the colossal basalt logs of Madol to the drilled monolith in the Sicilian Channel, we see a recurring impulse to build on a monumental scale using Cyclopean stonework. Second, geography provides a startling clue. Many of these enigmatic sites are found not in the deep abyss, but along a specific underwater contour, roughly 100 meters below today's sea level. This line is not arbitrary. It marks the approximate coastline of our world at the peak of the last ice age, a time when vast expanses of continental shelf were dry, fertile land. This suggests these ruins are not randomly placed, but trace the outline of a lost world, the very shores where ancient peoples lived and built. Third, and perhaps most compelling, is the memory preserved in story. Cultures separated by oceans share eerily similar narratives of a great flood. The Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh speaks of a deluge sent by the gods. The Hindu texts describe the drowning of Dwarka. Plato recounted the tale of Atlantis, a mighty empire lost beneath the sea in a single day and night. Indigenous stories from the Americas to Australia speak of ancestral lands consumed by water. These are not mere myths, but could they be collective, cultural memories of a real, traumatic event that reshaped the entire planet? Scholars who study these connections, like Graham Hancock, propose a radical synthesis. They suggest these 15 sites, and countless others yet to be found, are not isolated achievements of unrelated cultures. Instead, they are the fragmented legacy of what some call a mother culture, an advanced maritime civilization that thrived on those now drowned coastal plains during the last ice age. This society, they argue, possessed sophisticated knowledge of astronomy, agriculture, and megalithic construction, and its influence seeded the early development of known ancient cultures after its diaspora. The mechanism for its disappearance is written in the ice cores. Beginning around 14,000 years ago, as the great ice sheets melted, global sea levels rose dramatically, not in a steady creep, but in a series of rapid, catastrophic pulses. The most significant, known as Meltwater Pulse 1A, occurred around 14,000 years ago, raising oceans by over 20 meters in just a few centuries. Imagine the world map changing within a few generations, coastlines retreating miles inland, islands vanishing, and every coastal society on Earth facing an existential crisis. This geological timeline provides the canvas for the theory. It proposes that the true cradle of human civilization was not the river valleys of Mesopotamia and Egypt that emerged after the floods, but the vast, fertile continental shelves that preceded them. These lowland plains, now under 100 meters of water, would have been ideal for early agriculture and settlement, offering rich soil and mild climates. What if the first cities, the first complex societies, were built there? Their destruction by rising seas would have forced survivors inland and upland, carrying fragments of their knowledge, technology, and their most haunting story, the story of the flood, to the four corners of the globe. This idea does not discard the known achievements of ancient Egypt or Sumer, but radically recontextualizes them. It asks us to see them not as sudden, miraculous births of civilization, but as Renaissance periods, the rebuilding efforts of a species that had already reached a zenith once before, only to have its greatest works erased by the ocean. The implications are as deep as the sea itself, challenging the very narrative of human progress and inviting us to wonder what other blueprints for our past are still waiting, preserved in the silent archive of the drowned world. From the steppe terraces of Yonaguni to the drowned monoliths of Sicily, a compelling narrative emerges from the deep. It is a story that suggests our ancestors may have reached a level of architectural and societal sophistication far earlier than our history books have ever admitted, only to have their world literally washed away by the rising tides of a warming planet. The sheer volume and staggering geographic spread of these 15 sunken sites form a pattern too persistent to ignore. They whisper of a common human experience, a shared trauma of catastrophic sea level rise that reset our cultural memory and scattered our earliest achievements across the ocean floor. This is not necessarily a search for a single mythical Atlantis, a lone island empire that sank in a day. Instead, it points toward something perhaps more profound, the recognition of a lost epoch. Imagine a time when the continental shelves were not submerged, but were vibrant, fertile plains, home to communities and cultures that thrived for millennia. These were the real-world landscapes where humanity first experimented with complex society, built its first monuments, and charted the stars. Then the climate shifted. The great ice sheets melted, and the waters returned not slowly but in great, unstoppable pulses. This was not an event, but a process that unfolded over generations, a relentless encroachment that forced a global retreat, scattering survivors and their fragmented knowledge to every corner of the world. What we call the dawn of civilization in Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley may, in this light, be better understood as a rebirth. These were not miraculous beginnings from nothing, but a regrouping, a rebuilding of something that had come before. The echoes of that lost world are what we find in the shared flood myths, in the similar megalithic styles, and in the silent ruins that guard our forgotten shores. Mainstream archaeology rightly urges caution, demanding rigorous evidence and peer-reviewed verification, and this discipline of skepticism is essential. Yet, the discoveries themselves also demand an open-minded re-examination of our past. They ask us to expand our timeline and to consider that human ingenuity on a grand scale is far older than we ever presumed. The quest, then, is for a new understanding of resilience. It is about seeing our history not as a straight, upward line from primitive to advanced, but as a story of cycles, of achievements lost and knowledge regained, of civilizations that rose only to be humbled by the planet's immense, changing power. If these silent stones could speak, what stories would they tell? Would they speak of cities alive with trade, of ceremonies under different stars, of a people who mastered their environment, only to watch it vanish beneath the waves? We may never hear their voices directly, but by continuing to explore, to map, and to question, we give their legacy a chance to surface once more. Which of these sunken ruins do you find the most compelling? Is it the haunting geometry of Yonaguni, the myth-made drill at Dwarka, or the humble, preserved village of Atlit? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest mysteries, and remember, sometimes the most profound truths are not buried in the dust, but submerged in the deep, waiting patiently for us to look beneath the surface.